Hello, Svitlana.
Hello, Arne.
How is it going for you?
Everything is good. How about you?
Excellent. Yeah, same here, same here. I don't know why I'm always asking the same question. We know all is good. If I really see you with a sad face one day, I will ask you seriously, like, hey, is everything okay with you? And
Oh,
then you
luckily
can,
that doesn't happen too often.
it's like, yeah, well, I'm having another lesson with you. Meow. No, okay, hopefully this is not the case that this is bringing the mood down. Actually, I learned a lot in the last couple of months from you and also from Elizabeth, and I'm very, very grateful that you're having this show and this opportunity to teach all of us a lot with your smart moves. So, what do you have on the plate today?
Okay, so I have a feeling that we haven't looked at endgames in a long while. So I thought to
Great.
do some Rook endgames with you. I know it's not your favorite, and honestly, it's very rare that I hear someone say, "Yes, endgames are my favorite thing in the world."
Okay,
But
okay.
yeah, so I wanted to start with some very, very basic ones. I'm sure that you know them, but for people who don't, it's very important to get to know them before moving on to something a bit more difficult. So this one, I am sure you could probably even give a lesson on it yourself.
As you can see my Superman pose, I'm absolutely happy that we're doing this right now because I actually have no freaking clue. And this is the best opportunity to finally get this chess knowledge of the end games a little bit better into my brain. And I hope for you at home it is a little bit the same way. What is my cat doing? It's crazy. Anyway, doesn't matter. You probably won't hear it. Yeah, white's move and white will win.
No, no, black's move.
Oh, it's black's move and black will get the
Yeah.
draw.
Yes, yes. I think you do know this position, though. It's something you've definitely seen before. Maybe you're just not remembering.
I've seen this position hundreds of times, but I probably never really played it correctly after all. Now, I do you hear this background noise or is it
I don't
no? Okay,
know.
good. Then I will just leave it as it is. I think our cat has a new basket and is scratching in the basket the whole time. So it's annoying me a little bit, but as long as you guys don't hear it, then everything is fine. Now, okay, so I will try to use my advantage of having a big, big space away from the white king and give a check on f2.
Okay, so giving a check on f2, what will you do after white plays king e6?
I believe I have to move the king, otherwise I'm checkmated.
Okay, so the king moves away, for example, here. It doesn't really matter where, but then you will run into problems with king e7, and your king is a bit cut off, and it will later, once the pawn starts moving, it'll be impossible to stop it anymore.
Okay, 1 second,
So
please.
yeah, now I can hear it a bit, but but it's okay.
Pardon me. Okay, so the first move I made and it's already wrong. Great.
No, it's a very common mistake though,
Oh
because once you
no.
see a check, you do want to give
You
checks in a
just
rook
jump.
endgame.
Yeah.
It's hard to resist, yeah, but that is not
So
that is
maybe the correct idea is to not let the. Oh no, that also won't work. I thought about putting the rook to b5 so the pawn cannot advance forward, but if the king goes to f6,
mhm,
then I'm having another problem again, I believe.
yeah, right. Then e6 becomes
So what to do here? So actually, yes, as you can see, I'm unfortunately I'm lost in 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 this endgame study already. Oh boy.
maybe if I tell you the name of it, you might recall it. It's called the Philidor position.
Yeah, I've heard this a couple of times already. Hopefully Carsten Müller doesn't see this right now.
Oh
I've
no,
been in
yeah, he would be very mad at you.
he would be so sad and mad and would not look at me anymore. Anyway, Yeah, there must be a certain system, and how about I'm just moving the rook to b1 and wait what white will do?
Well, if you wait, then you might run into king f6, and then e6 is now a threat. And if you give a check from behind, then king
Oh
e6.
gosh.
So
It
still
so
is
this
threatening king
this
f6.
is the must knowledge for everybody in the endgames.
Mhm.
And I am not aware of it. Isn't this
No, the good thing
fantastic?
is once you learn it once, you remember it forever.
It's like riding a bicycle, hopefully.
Hopefully, yeah.
Okay. So
So
what
the threat
else?
is king f6.
Yes. King.
That's something you know already.
Okay. So what happens if I move the rook to b6? It doesn't help me further, does it?
Rook b6 is the right move. In reality, it is the right defense technique.
Okay.
So that is the whole idea of this of the Philidor position, and this will work with any type of pawn. So it doesn't matter that the pawn is on b5, c5, d5. Well, a5 and h5, the rook pawns, they are easier to defend. That's usually a clearer draw. But any pawn standing anywhere on the fifth rank, all of these positions are a draw with this exact same technique.
Wow.
The rook always goes on the sixth rank.
And once it
And
is there, I can actually see it. Yeah, kind of.
so the thing is, you're preventing king f6. Any checks are not really a threat because then our king comes up. And if the rook just moves along the seventh rank, then you stay on the sixth rank. So the idea is to stay on the sixth rank until white plays e6. And the second white plays e6, can you guess the idea of what
Yes,
was
so
the goal?
now I'm going to the furthest place away to b1, and then I can bombard the white king with checks until the game is a draw.
Right. So you go b2 or b1, almost the same thing, but better to just go the farthest away you can. And there is nothing that you can do to prevent checks because the king can try to advance, but now he doesn't have this square to hide behind the e5 pawn, and you give checks forever. And this is a very simple draw. If you know the rook b6 idea, you will make a draw 100% of the times that you're playing this, unless you flag, but hopefully that doesn't happen.
One last question I have though.
Yeah.
When white plays e6 and the white rook after rook to b1, the white rook moves to, let's say,
a4, you want to cover
for
the text
example,
or
yes.
something? Well, then there's king e7, and you're no longer really creating the threats. I can now start giving checks.
Okay, nice.
And
at one point,
yes,
I'll just take the pawn then. Okay, good. Thank you. Okay,
yeah.
I think I
So
will never forget that. You're right.
Yeah, this is it, because you just need to remember the rook b6 idea, and that's the end of it. And that's one of the must-know endgames. One of the must-known rook endgames because it appears a lot and it works with every pawn on the fifth rank.
Perfect.
And it works really well. So next time you have it, you'll for sure know that.
Shame on me. I don't know how many countless blitz games I probably would have drawn instead of lost like this if I would knew about it before. And the funniest part about all of this is that why the heck did I never really learn it like that? Anyway, that's why you are there.
If you were raised by the Soviet chess school, you would have learned it before you even learned how to speak.
Nice.
And I'm not even kidding. They learn all of these by heart.
Okay, nice one. So we're black again.
No, and now we are white. And I just wanted to ask you if you knew what was the winning technique in this scenario.
For some reason, I have the feeling I know about this one. I think I have to use my rook to place between the other opponent rook in order to get my queen going. So that said, and also I have to get the black king on distance. But how to do that the best way? So once I'm going to d7 with my king, I am vulnerable to checks and the game is already done. So I guess the most natural move might be rook to c1.
I think that might also win. Rook d1, rook e1. I don't know about rook c1, but definitely somewhere rook d1, rook e1. The first move does not matter as much, but what matters is, well, the idea that you go for after.
Okay.
So you were, I think you were on the right track with the fact that you need to use your rook to intercept one of the checks from the opponent's rook. But you have to do it on, I think you were trying to do it from the side.
Yeah.
Yeah, so you don't do it from that angle. So the first move, let's just start with rook g1. So that's because we're trying to push the king away. The king cannot go to f6 because then we play king f8 and promote right away.
Oh, I didn't see that. Oh.
No, it's fine. It's always a useful check to give if you're getting the king away.
Yeah.
But now, what do you think is the method?
So now I believe the king is far enough away. So now I can go to either e1 or d1.
Thing is, if you go to d1, I would be able to just come back to g7, and your king might still not.
You're right. And then I can repeat this game. No. Oh no.
What? I'm once again, I am certain that everyone has seen this position before at least once, but and once you learn the technique for the first time, you'll remember it.
Okay. So what about king? No, that's also not working. Oh no. And my cat is really
so what we are worried about are the
annoying
checks
cat ever in this very moment when we're recording. Unbelievable. Anyway,
let's blame it on the cat.
Exactly. It's actually the cat which is making me so confused here.
So we are worried about these checks from this side of the board. Usually that's what black will do. So the second that your king comes out from the hiding spot, then the rook will start checking it. So these are the checks that we are worried about, and we want to try to find a way to intercept them.
Okay, so then it's no, it's not working. Huh? How to intercept this? I'm so lost. Can you believe it? You didn't expect that, right? That I wouldn't.
No, I did not. I thought you would know most of these positions, then it's even more useful than I expected.
I'm on the cycle and I need the little helping wheels to get riding.
No, but it's all right. Once you see it, I'm telling you, you'll remember it for a very.
So this is perfect, and I hope for you at home this is the absolute same experience. This is for the absolute beginners. Everybody who is a bit more advanced. See you next episode. And I'm sorry for.
We will have some more difficult rook endgame.
Maybe see you later. So I would say rook goes to, but then I went there already, and then the king is going back.
So maybe you don't go anywhere from the g file.
So there's only one chance. I moved the king to f7. This is what I thought earlier. But then the rook is giving a check.
Yeah, right. Then the rook is giving a check, and you can't really escape from them because I will just keep checking you wherever you go. Yeah.
And then you goes back again. Oh no, it's moving back and forth. So this is crazy because it feels now. Okay, so what happens if I'm going with my no, it's not helping. Yeah, okay. I know it now. Trust me, I know it now.
Mm-hmm.
I'm going with my rook to d1.
Okay, and what is?
What
Oh,
was it?
didn't we just talk about
But but what happens? It doesn't matter if the king is going there.
Okay, it might. It's still winning because it's hard to ruin a position like that.
Okay.
But okay, let's say
So what
King
happens
G.
if I'm going with the king to d7 now?
And now
Roger,
the only
you're
chance.
killing my mood today. Okay.
This, I
And
guess.
yeah, and then it's checks again.
Yeah.
e6, and then you just go down with the rook, I guess, or give another check. Yeah, whatever you feel like.
Yeah.
Okay, please help me before
Yes.
this lesson is going too long. What is the plan
So
here?
the plan is to play Rook G4, specifically on the fourth rank.
What if?
It's called building a bridge.
Oh
Or
no!
have you recalled it?
Yeah.
Yeah. So from the fourth rank, the rook will intercept the check. So if the check goes from the side, then we can just play king f6 and promote on the next move. But the problem is the checks are the checks from behind. So the king will come out, and after some more checks, so we will make sure that we're defending the pawn and not going too far. And then in this situation, we're going specifically to e5, so that on the next check, we can play rook e4. And the important thing here is that the king is back here on h7 and not on g7, because if it is, then it will catch the pawn in time. So once the king is far enough, you start this bridging technique, and it once again works with any pawn. It doesn't matter where the pawn is, but just remember to build. In order to build that bridge, it's always well, for white it's on the fourth rank. For black is going to be the opposite.
Wow.
I think you've seen
Embarrassing.
it before.
But didn't you tell me that I would never forget it?
Well,
No,
maybe the first time someone explained it to you, it didn't stick.
to tell you the truth, nobody ever told it to me before. I knew about this technique, but I didn't know how. I saw it maybe once or twice, but there was no explanation like you just gave it. So thank you. I will never ever forget that.
Yeah, so
That
remember, it's
is
called
the
uh, it's
bridge.
called building a bridge, and you always do it on the fourth rank. Well, with white.
Okay, fantastic. Wow.
Yeah.
I think I'm learning a lot today. Hope is this unbelievable or what? This guy, sorry, he needs attention, but he doesn't get attention. I am in my beautiful rook ending and end game course here. Okay. Oh,
Okay, so
oh,
this
another one
next
of those.
yeah, this is 4 pawns against 3 pawns, and this is actually one of my games, which probably is one of the worst rook end games that I've ever played. It was after this was my first in-person tournament after COVID, and I'm not gonna lie, I probably forgot everything that I've ever known about endgames.
Oh
But
boy.
that's not the issue here. It's just the fact that losing a four against three is just so embarrassing. Like you can't tell that to to anyone. Um,
Okay, it's our little secret. We won't tell anybody. Don't worry.
well, right, it's something that almost everyone knows that it's definitely a draw, and well, rook end games tend to be very very drawish. That's
Mhm.
that's
Yeah,
also a
I've
common.
heard the saying from Carsten Müller a lot of times too. Rook end games are always a draw. Well, yeah, but
Yeah,
of
and
course not always.
usually one pawn is not enough to convert to a win, because there's always some check, or the pawn doesn't make it too far. And especially in a situation where it's 4 pawns against 3 pawns, regardless of the color, this is one of the, let's say, typical positions that you can get. And anyway, so this is one of my games, and it has some. So it has. It will transpose into a different type of rook endgame later, which I also want to show. So it has a few instructive moments, and I'm just glad that even though I did end up losing this game, it at least hopefully will be instructive. And this was also a very annoying game to play, because it was going on for like 5 hours or something. And this was the last round. And honestly, all I wanted from the last round was just to make a quick draw and go see my family. But I've I'm not good, as a chess player, you don't go for quick draws, and I did try my best in this game for sure, but it wasn't just not the comfortable, easy position that I was hoping for. And yeah, it was a really long end game, but we are gonna see it. So imagine you're playing here as black. So this is
Mhm.
not something that I'll really teach you how to do as white, because you just try your best, you set traps, and you hope your opponent makes a mistake. There's nothing you can do if the opponent doesn't make a mistake. You just try your best, and you're at no risk. And I have won these as white before, maybe a bit earlier when I was still playing against more younger players, and when I was younger. So I have definitely won these before, but after a certain level,
You
people
just
just
shouldn't.
agree
Yeah.
just agree to draws, and because they trust they can defend it. But well, I didn't defend it in this game, but yeah, hopefully you'll be able to learn from it. So as a defensive side, what would be your first instinct in this position?
To move the king out of the check.
Okay,
Hmm.
so you want to play king e6?
Yes. Well, king e3 or
Oh,
um
sorry. Why did I make? Okay, yeah, this is it. Sorry,
okay,
yeah, you're
okay.
playing. You're playing Vlach. This
Ah,
there
I
was a
see. I
check
see.
here.
I see. Okay.
Yeah.
So then Now out of a sudden it gets more complicated since I'm black.
Yeah, of
Bummer.
course. I told you I'm not gonna make you play it as white.
You're right. You're right. I'm just kidding. So, yeah, I am already clueless again. But what would I do? Maybe I will just use the tactic which you once told me about and just put place the rook as far away as possible and every now and then give a check. So I would
Okay.
just go to, let's say, a4.
Okay. That's usually not a bad idea, but you have to do something very, very essential first.
Oh,
And that essential thing, so by the way, I played King E6, which to be honest, I think is an inaccuracy because it's not the best way to defend this position. It's still a draw and it will stay a draw for forever. But um, to make your defense easier, you have to use every little chance you get to just take away all opportunities from the opponent, and that move is h5. So this pawn
hmm.
structure is is key
Oh,
in not just rook endgames, but in a lot of endgames. This is the best way to place your pawns.
okay.
You've
I,
never heard of that before? Well, it
well,
is especially in rook endgames. The reason why you do it, this is when you're defending, and just in general, it's a good way. For example, in queen end games, you just do this to prevent any back ranks, to have a hiding spot for the king. So you don't just do this in rook end games, but it can be useful in other end games as well. But in 4 against 3, once the pawns are placed like this, it becomes very difficult for the opponent to create a passed pawn.
okay.
So and h6 is not really a weakness
Hmm.
anymore. So because in other cases, maybe the rook could have come, given some checks, and this could have been a weakness if this pawn was blockaded. But once it's on h5, both pawns are defending it. All pawns are defending each other. There's no pass pawn that white can make without making some trades, and the more trades happen, the easier it becomes to defend.
Hmm.
So two on 3 is easier to defend than a 3 on 4, and that's easier than a 5 on 4. And if those, so the more pawns, the more chances for the side who's pushing for the win. So
Okay.
just remember to make this h5 move and place your pawns like this. I During the game I didn't play it because I didn't think it really mattered. It's like I'll just do it later. It's not a big deal. It's a
I've
draw
got
anyway,
time.
which it is. It is a draw anyway. But you just keep once you just keep making your position a bit harder and then a bit harder, a bit and a bit harder. At
Yeah.
some point, maybe it's those little inaccuracies start to accumulate. So this would be the most simple way to make a draw.
Okay, very good. So you really have to play after the book of technique and get this stuff in to avoid any other shenanigans which might occur if you're not playing absolutely accurately. So yeah, okay, good to know. Good to
So
know.
yeah, h5 is an important point. It's if possible. Of course, if it's not possible, then
Sure.
you just have to defend the position as it is. But if possible, you just place your pawns like that, and it becomes simpler. So I wasted one move. Okay, I thought it wasn't a big deal.
Okay, it's just so you
Yeah.
also to be clear, once the rooks are exchanged,
Mhm.
then white has a big advantage to win.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay,
The
okay,
you never exchange the rooks when you're down a pawn
good to know.
because
Sorry for all the
pawn endgame's
stupid
more likely.
questions, but I'm just like, as
No
you
worries.
can see, I'm like elo rating 500 about those endgames, so I'm really asking the most normal questions here, and I'm serious with this. Although I have a real-time rating of over 1900, yeah, this is the reason why sometimes people try to reach endgames as quickly as possible against me.
Well, hopefully now you'll have an easier
Yeah,
time defending
come
some
on,
rook endgames.
endgames.
Yeah. Um, so I spent that one extra move just moving the king, and now suddenly white plays g4, and there is no more chance to play h5, because if I do that, then that pawn will be a weakness later. Some rook, maybe not right. Okay, don't know if it's a move right away, but
But at some
just to
point, maybe.
say it's now a weakness.
Hmm.
So now g4 does not allow to play h5, and the pawn on h6 could potentially become attacked by the rook like that. So that's just an extra little detail, which maybe doesn't make a difference now, or maybe not even in 10 or 15 moves, but at some point in 30 moves, you will lose that pawn. So here, the right choice was to play f5, which I considered very, very seriously during the game.
Oof.
And because you want to make as many trades as possible,
Sure.
and you don't want to miss your chance for pawn trades. But the thing I was scared of was this position. So basically, I knew this is a draw um, for the defending side, but
Difficult.
not as sure as I was that a 3-on-4 is a draw.
Yeah.
So this is definitely still a draw, and quite simply, actually, after rook a5.
Oh.
And actually, I believe rook a5 is very precise. You have to be precise here at a few moments. So a position like this is a draw, and precisely why this rook a5 makes it is because you play h5 and then you exchange one of the pawns, and with only one pawn, then we later get to that Philidor position in any case, as long as the king is not cut off, and you make a draw every time. So this was the way to draw this position, and I just wanted to keep it a 3-on-4 because I was 100% certain that it's a draw, right? But these tiny little missed chances later make the position more difficult to defend. So let me maybe skip a few points in this game because it is not that exciting. It was going on for like 70 moves, maybe even more. Yeah, almost 100. But f5.
That's about that. I just want to make a quick draw
Yeah.
and see my parents. Yeah.
Yeah. It was the longest game that I even had in the tournament. It was the one where I had to defend for so long in time trouble, the most stressful game of this turn. And it was the one time when I actually wanted to go and see my relatives, because I had relatives in the US in the tournament. I came to see them, and I saw that there was I planned the trip so that I could also play in that tournament.
Gotcha, yeah.
And it was the one time when they were actually waiting for me. And it was the one time when I had the longest game that could have possibly happened.
This is probably a tiny bit also affecting your mind too when you're playing a game, I believe.
Well, it's still maybe it does affect it a bit psychologically, but I don't think it makes you play sort of differently.
Okay.
It doesn't mean that I'm going to offer a draw in the beginning or something like that. But yeah, usually when you're honestly having the mindset of playing for a draw is really, really bad. It's horrible.
Yeah, this is horrible. I hate that too. Absolutely. With black, I would try to play for a win here, But then again, that's me. I'm just kidding. Also,
Oh no, I'm not talking about from a specific position. I'm talking about from the
in
beginning.
general, absolutely, yes.
At the beginning of the game, you always lose a game that you're playing for a draw.
Hmm.
So it's usually when you need it most, but it's okay to have some drawing strategies. So for example, picking a calmer opening, that's fine. When you don't want anything too crazy and tactical, but it's not the same as just specifically playing for a draw and just exchanging everything that you see, because that usually doesn't end well if your opponent is in a fighting mood. So in this endgame, honestly, if we had more time, I would even made you defend it as black. But I feel like that's a bit too mean because it's not the easiest endgame to defend.
Hmm.
But I'll maybe skip over a few moves here because it will go on very long time. So my strategy was just to carry it on as long as possible, give checks, make sure that white just doesn't make too much of an improvement. That's what you do. So as a defensive side, you just want to keep the position as it is and make sure that there is no passed pawn that gets created. And this is how it got transformed. So, right, we still see that pawn h5, pawn g6, and pawn f6, but we would much rather have had this pawn on g3 in the beginning position than it is on g5, because now it's closer. Now more chances that this pawn will actually make it somewhere.
Mm-hmm.
So we would have much rather had it on g3. So this is why I was really saying that h5 was a very essential move to know. So maybe I'll skip to move somewhere like that. So white has made a bit of progress, maybe not much, but now there is a serious threat coming from white. What do you think is the way to defend from this point? How would you play from the black side?
I would probably just give as many checks as possible. And then, yeah, I guess that's the idea.
That's what I did, and it's wrong. Well, I played rook b3, and it was not the right move.
Okay.
But there are a few good ones. So.
Then, I mean, there's another idea, but I don't think it's correct. But it just like get the king into the corner, like on the king
No,
side.
you don't. You
help,
don't.
Right?
You don't do that in rook endgames. You want your king to be as active as possible.
Okay.
A king is
Makes
worth
sense.
you. Usually in rook endgames, king's activity is worth as much as a rook's activity. So. That's usually like a good king can compensate for the opponent's rook activity or vice versa. So a king is just as important as the rook in those.
Okay. Well, so isn't the pawn on h4 a bit vulnerable maybe? So I can attack it with my rook?
Rook b4 is one of the moves that is good, because if you provoke f4, then you can have your checks forever. That's great for us. Now the king cannot hide. But I was a bit worried about e6. That is what white was threatening. So the idea is to get this g6 pawn.
Now I see.
And right. And see, now this g5 pawn, which we shouldn't have allowed there in the first place, now it can be very close. But to be fair, this endgame is still a draw because the pawn isn't really going too far. We have an equal number of pawns. Of course, white's pawn is a bit closer, but something like this is definitely a draw because you still have our own counterplay with the h pawn, and it can get somewhere just as fast as the g pawn. So that was one of the ways to draw. There are other ones like rook b1, and then again you're just waiting for white to play f4 so that you can just start giving your checks. Basically everything is working. Rook h2 is working. But
Except
Rook
Rook
b3,
b3.
it's just a move that you make in time trouble because it's a check.
Totally, yeah.
It's what I've been doing for the past 30 moves. Is I'm just checking or waiting or just trying to make sure that White's ideas are not working. So now White has that one and only idea to break through here, and is to play e6. And unfortunately, it is actually a fairly good idea, and it should, by this point, once White does get through to this, this is already harder to defend. So you see, these endgames, they transpose into like one another, because this endgame could be like a study of its own. And
Okay.
it's all of these, once you know the basic ones, it becomes easier to, when you're playing, because you start to see opportunities to transpose into one thing or another. And for example, if you know this endgame, and let's say you know it's a draw, then you know what you're aiming for, you know what you're transposing into. It's like, do you remember we had a lesson on the F and the H pawns?
Yes.
How that's a draw, right?
Yes,
So if you
exactly.
have a situation where you have a difficult endgame to defend, and suddenly you see that you can transpose into the F and H pawn endgame, maybe you have to give up a pawn for it. You sacrifice a pawn, and then you transpose into that. You can do that because you know it's a draw. It will still not be easy to defend, but at least it gives you confidence, and it's somewhere where you have knowledge that it can be a draw. So here, this is one. This is also a technical endgame. What do you think is the evaluation of this endgame, and how would you play here if you were playing from my side?
So once I swap the rooks, I am afraid that White can get the last pawn, and then we'll just win the end game.
Right. So you do not want to swap
yes,
rooks.
so I have to move to, let's say, maybe rook to b6 to try to avoid rook to f6 from White's side.
Exactly. Rook b6 makes a draw.
Finally, my god.
You got it. Rook b6 makes a draw.
Seems everything else is also correct, but yeah.
And it's now very hard for White to ever get to this h pawn. It doesn't matter what they do. They can play rook a3 or something. Your king will advance then, and there is a defense to that pawn. So this after rook b6, it's very precise to control the f6 square, and quite a simple draw. So I don't think I didn't know this position. Mm-hmm. I didn't know that this was a technical draw, but it seemed like the best outcome of what we had here after we made that trade on g6. Mm-hmm. So yeah, it seemed like a best outcome to just trade a few more pawns. And here I made yet another inaccuracy where I played rook b1, and that allowed this rook f6, which I don't know if you play it right away, but it's just an idea that I left for later, that I didn't defend against this. Against this. And here, this is the most critical moment of the game, and I'll tell you how it ended up after. But here, let's say, I don't know, you have like 20 seconds left, and you just need to instantly decide where to move the king, and only one of the spots is right. Where do you think
king
you
e6? I would have moved to king e6.
And okay, that's what I did, and it is not the right.
I thought so, yeah. But it seems like the only move where you can get the king in front, then give a check, and then maybe get the last pawn.
The thing is, at this point in the game, I was of course I could have calculated it before. So as I was playing rook b4, I saw one saving idea, which is honestly not even that difficult when I look back at it. But when I saw it over the board, I thought, I couldn't believe it was working. I thought, like, wow, that is just so wonderful. I can't believe it's working. And then when we got to this point, I got a bit confused. I was wondering if it worked in other scenarios. And I played king e6 because I was running really low on time, and it's just the move that you play if you're playing on instinct. But it was just so frustrating that I did see that right idea for a split second, but I just didn't believe in it enough to play it. So it is not, if it's not king e6, can you guess what it has to be?
Then it has to be king f8, probably.
Right, so king f8, rook h7.
And then, oh, the rook is caught. Is that the case? King to g8.
Yeah,
Rook
sure,
takes
king
h5, and then king to g7.
king g7 doesn't trap it, then rook
Oh,
h6.
that's true. So how to trap him then? Oh, rook to b6.
Exactly.
Oh, this is crazy.
So I'm telling you, I was when I saw it for a split second during the game, it was just, I thought it was so amazing that it was because I didn't know it. Because after um, I showed it to my coach, and he was like, "Yes, that's the most basic thing that's a basic endgame. I thought you
Really?
would know it." Yeah, but when I found it, it was just like it blew my mind after,
Yes.
like, when so well, during the game it didn't happen because I just didn't have enough time to really figure it out. um but yeah, I had a feeling that, like, this was it was working, but I just found that it was so unbelievable. But I'm saying maybe it's not as unbelievable to someone else. Like, to my coach, it wasn't even it wasn't anything special, because yeah, just
Yeah. What?
yeah, it's just something, of
Of
course,
course you
that's a
play that.
common rook trap.
Oh man.
But I think it's different when you are defending and you find it yourself during the game, rather than if it's something that you already know.
True.
So yeah, but it would have been such a nice way to
Yeah.
finish the game and to just draw it. But yeah, I played king e6 and none of this happened. But why this endgame is a draw is that this rook has nowhere to go, right? So it cannot go to h6. If it goes to h6, then we trade the into the h pawns endgame, and this is a draw every time, because the king just stays in the corner. So white can never do that. The rook cannot go to these two either, because the king will always be protecting them. And white's king cannot advance any further because the rook is here guarding everything. So there's never a way that white can free himself from this rook being on h5 forever. If there's ever g6, then we're just gonna take it. Yeah, if the king comes to f5, I think we just stay over here, and we can now start giving checks, or maybe even I'm wondering if you can even just stay, but I would just probably give a check, and
checks
the king
should.
has nowhere to go.
Although, yeah, checks can do the trick, but then can the pawn move in front of h? No, because you're giving checks, it's impossible.
Yeah, because I'm giving checks, and the second the king
yeah.
comes back, I can
True.
I can go back. Or I'm not sure why the computer really prefers rook a4, but maybe you
if
just
it's going
play
to
that.
a6, then the pawn can move forward. No, it doesn't help.
No, not really.
No, it doesn't help at all.
Because important thing is you don't take. Maybe even if you take, it's fine. Yeah, it actually is fine. It actually is fine to even take, but I would just play with the king.
Yeah.
And be sure that this is a draw. So I just to me that this rook trap on h5, I thought it was unbelievable that this was actually working. Maybe to some people it's not that surprising, but I didn't know it before the game. And yeah, now it's certainly something that I will not forget, because it's hard to forget when you lose a game like that.
That's the most painful experience, which will get under your skin. So if you ever have that position again, then you can already rub your hands and like, yes, I know that.
I honestly believe in some sort of like balance in life or something like that. When let's say you have a really unlucky situation that happened to you, I often notice that something similar comes back, where you can use something you learned from that unlucky situation, and it will it will work out, and you'll see why you needed that unlucky situation to happen to you in the first place, because it helped you later in the future. So I find that happens a lot with chess, where you just lose a game very painfully in some sort of end game like that, but then you have this same end game at an even more important tournament years later, but because you remember that, it helped you save at that time when it actually mattered more later in life. So
Totally true,
um,
yeah.
so yeah, that's why I don't grieve losses too much, because I always know it's a learning opportunity, and it is not the end of the world, and you can always learn something from it. So yeah, that was the game I
Perfect.
had.
You
Yeah.
can unshare the screen, and I mean, if you knew all those Rook end games already, then at least what you just said, like, do not grieve about the losses in your chess games too much. That's a very, very good lesson if you can take something out of this at all. But still, this is a absolutely grand course. You have to know those particular Rook end games, at least, yeah, the three examples you were showing. What makes it for me so difficult in endgames is that you have to be more precise with every single move than in almost any other situation. I
Mhm.
hate it, because if
Right,
you make the
right.
tiniest little mistake, often that's it. Yeah, the computer evaluation stays at a zero, and then
Yeah, yeah.
blows
Even the
into the
little
skies.
details do make a difference. And the annoying part is that we're all usually in time trouble by the time we get to the end
Also,
games.
yeah,
So that doesn't really help, because
that
there's
doesn't
there's a
help.
lot of calculation. So learning end games certainly does help. Um, but have you ever read Dvoretsky's Endgame manual?
No, I haven't, but I think you mentioned it to me
Yeah,
already.
it's the classic book
Okay.
for anyone who's learning endgames. It's the most classic you can get. He was Mark Dvoretsky was a big expert on endgames, and I'm sure that every top player that even not even top player, any grandmaster, I'm sure has at least looked at the Dvoretsky's endgame manual, because it's a very fundamental thing to read. I couldn't get through the entire thing because it's very long.
Colossal.
Yeah, it's tough to do it when you don't have a specific when you don't have something specific that you want to learn. But
Hmm.
it's a useful thing to look back on when, let's say, you've had a game in a certain end game, and then you can go to check it out and see what was the right way to play. So yeah, there's always new additions where they improve the analysis, and I think it's a great book, but it is quite long, and it can be difficult to get through. But if you're motivated to get better at end games, it will be the right
That's
book for
something to
you.
go for. And I also have to mention something, and of course, you will see it right below the video, by the way. So, one of our my colleagues at ChessBase, he mentioned, like, we're talking about chess a lot. He's a very good player, so he mentioned, like, dude, do you have you're at ChessBase? Get Carsten Müller's all the bands of how to start with everything with the end games, because he started with volume 1 the absolute basics, and volume 2 is everything about the Rook endgames, and he said, like, this is the most important of them all. So if you
Mhm.
just study this, you're set for life, for the rest of your life, with the endgames, just how you were teaching this to me. Well, guess what? I didn't look at yet, but I was looking at volume 1. It's very, very informative and very, very good.
Mhm.
Well, volume 2 has to be on my to-do list, at least in this year. It's always about the time, and then
Yeah.
it is always effort too. It's not like you're listening to Carsten and then you have it in your brain. You have to be active. You have to replay this a couple of times to really get it into your system. And but the good thing is now, since in this video which we were making today, there were a lot of cat sounds. So every time my cat is meowing, I'm thinking of the Philidor. I'm thinking of how to build the umbrella now. This is like the Pavlov dogs. This is exactly what's coming into my mind end games when I hear my cats meow. And this will happen every day. So that's the good part about
Yeah, that is
that.
wonderful.
Svitlana, thank you so much for this excellent lesson. And yeah, we will see you next week for a couple of more smart moves. Yes, goodbye, Roger, too. See you guys. Bye bye. Thanks for watching.